Great teachers show a child where to look, but not what to see. What teachers are telling us is, wow, I didn't realize that that child had that depth of inquiry, ability to focus and engage in the ways that they are doing right now. Nature does that, captures those kids who especially struggle in a classroom, looking at a textbook or a screen. They come alive outdoors. Time and time again, reflects that when they take learning outdoors, that the troublemakers of the indoor classroom become the leaders, not just better behaved, but the leaders. And then he goes on to say, how many leaders are we losing? And that translates back indoors. They start to see the potential of children through the way that they engage in nature. So if we don't give them opportunities to be outdoors, we miss those opportunities to see them in that light.
Welcome to the Life Rocks podcast. In this podcast, we explore how nature, science, education, and culture can benefit all children and future generations. This is a show for educators, parents, mentors, and anyone interested in making the lives of our children, families, and communities better. So sit back, take a breath, and enjoy the show. And now for your host, Asher Cloran.
G'day, Life Rocks listeners, and welcome to the Life Rocks podcast. I'm super stoked today to have Daniel Burton from Educated by Nature, an Australian organization based over in Perth that is doing such awesome things in connecting children to nature, getting them outside, running outdoor programs, going into schools, running incursions. The overall underpinning philosophy that Daniel's bringing to his work is absolutely immense. He's a real community leader, and this organization was founded back in 2014. He's got a background as a primary school teacher, and now doing work as educational consultant, rites of passage, obviously leading his organization, Educated by Nature, which is doing all sorts of wonderful things. And I'm really stoked as someone that I've been keeping an eye on over the years in the nature education space in Australia. I think Daniel's a real leader, and I'm just super excited to pick your brains, Daniel, about all things nature, childhood development. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Asher. What a warm and wonderful welcome. I'm humbled by those words.
Well, you are totally deserving of all of the humbling words today, my friend, because I know, from the bottom of my heart, exactly how much passion there is in the childhood education space. And I think nowadays, more than ever, kids need our help, and they need us to figure out better answers than the ones that have been most commonly distributed out there. Because, hey, let's face it, the education system's not really doing a lot of kids any favors nowadays, preparing them for a workforce rather than a life on planet Earth. So tell me, Daniel, when did you come to the realization as a teacher that children need nature and that it is exactly what we need to be promoting? Why did you change, or why did you even build what you've built in the first place? What was that dawning awareness that came to you about all of this stuff?
Oh, I love that question and origin story. I want to start here by actually acknowledging my business partner, my dear friend and colleague, Trudy Bennett. Trudy and I are co-founders of Educated by Nature, and we actually worked together as teachers at Bold Park Community School, and nature-based rego-inspired school over here in Perth. And that's where Educated by Nature was born. So Trudy would normally be sitting here with me today. She's
Shout out to Trudy.
Massive shout out to Trudy. She's currently running one of our school holiday programs. And so she's out doing the work. So yeah, acknowledge her and my ability to be here representing both of us and our organization. I guess the moments that led up to Educated by Nature's birth, now 10 years ago, wow, that seems like a long time ago, was our work in spearheading the development of outdoor classrooms, of taking learning outdoors. Our principal and the founder of the school, Gillian McCullough, who is still an incredible mentor of ours, and a thought leader in this realm as well. She challenged us to take our year 4, 5, 6 upper primary class outdoors for 2 whole days a week and have an outdoor classroom. And although Trudy and I had been doing some work with utilizing the outdoors as a learning space, and taking learning outdoors, doing lots of incursions to natural spaces in our local community, it was a daunting thought to have our whole classroom outdoors and to not actually utilize an indoor space. And this was talking about all weather. So rain, hail or shine. Hail, not so much. Heavy winds, like extreme winds, not so much, because of obviously the safety considerations of branches and trees and things. But most of our time on those 2 days a week was outside. And what we noticed in our class, and a class that had a lot of children who had different ways of engaging with learning, ADHD, autism, anxiety disorders, that all of those things seemed to melt away. And our whole class as a whole, including ourselves as educators, found deep connection, found stillness, found calm, found inspiration, and found engagement and motivation from being in that outdoor space. And I think we took those experiences and went, okay, we need to do more with this. We need to share this story more widely. We need to help other people do this work. We need to make sure that more than just the children in our class at that school on that particular year or those particular years have access to this way of engaging with learning and engaging with the outdoors. And so we started Educated by Nature, and that's where the journey began. What's been really exciting is that I think from there, we realized that it's more than education. It's more than about learning, and learning happens naturally when we get out of the way of children's lives. And so then our focus became on more, how do we support children, but also adults, youth, teens, everybody to see the benefits and access nature more freely and more readily and more frequently.
Yeah, awesome. Because it truly is, like, we know it, having seen the results on especially children who have those real issues in schools. I think they're a clearer barometer of exactly the impact of, what are the practices that we're doing? How are they impacting a child's mind state? And just going back to a study that I read recently, there was children who were assessed for behavioral conditions, and they did this over a month or so. So they tested the children twice, and the day that they tested them after they'd had 2 hours of free play, none of them tested up with behavioral issues, but no free play beforehand. And something like 80% of them tested as high, having behavioral issues. And as we know, that can lead to like medication or lots of therapy or special requirements within a class. And so to me, it's just crazy to think that this isn't being adopted all over the place. But now, because you're a consultant who literally goes around sharing these benefits of natures with maybe other schools or other teachers or groups that are trying to get these things implemented, what do you find the biggest barriers are that are stopping just normal mainstream schools or organizations picking this up as the main thing to do?
That's a great question. And I think the number one thing is fear or comfort or fear of discomfort. So a lot of the work that we end up doing is actually supporting educators, and we work with teachers in primary schools, in high schools. We work with educators and staff in early learning centres, in after school or out of school hours care spaces. And what we're finding is that for those adults to feel comfortable to take children out into natural spaces, they themselves need to feel comfortable in those outdoor spaces themselves. And I feel that we're in a really interesting time in our society, in that 10 years ago, we used to, or 15 years ago, we used to talk to people and say, like, what are your childhood memories of play? What ways did you play as a child? And a lot of the answers, a lot of the responses would be outdoors, away from adults, and with other children.
Yeah.
The responses we're getting now from adults or teenagers in out of school hours care settings and pre-service teachers is their play experiences were not outdoors. Their play experiences as children had lots of parents and lots of adults present, and they were often solitary. So the landscape of experience and play is changing. So play is moving online for a lot of children and a lot of teens. And these are the teens that are then working in schools and early learning centers. And like I could go on a tangent about digital play and the fact that, so Peter Gray talks a lot about the fact that children these days are finding freedom, opportunity to explore, community to connect with through online gaming. So it's filling a need that is not accessible to them in IRL, in real life. So it's filling a space, but the impact that is having is we don't have, or we are not going to have a community of adults that have those fond, like heart-filled memories of engaging with nature that they can bring into their experiences of supporting children in the next generation to build those experiences, which is frightening.
Wow. That's a really heavy hitting bunch of facts that you've given us there, because from what we know about memory formation, that the memories form in the brain when we're most actively engaged with our senses. So the fact that some of the memories forming of play for the now adults of this coming generation haven't been connected back to nature, that could be a real missing link in, as you say, people feeling comfortable enough with nature themselves as adults to represent it for children. Yeah, so it's kind of like this missing link could be that there's a generation that hasn't even been connected. So how do they role model it then to children? And I guess that's where some of the work that you're doing comes in, and maybe why you expanded it out to families and to teachers.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about your holiday programs and homeschool programs and your programs for teachers that is reconnecting the adults, because unless they're connected as individuals, they can tell a kid to go play outside all they want, or, go and find some stuff. But if they're not interested themselves, kids aren't going to emulate it.
Yeah. So our school holiday program is called Kin Village. And our aim with that program is to build a village, is to build a connection of community existing in the outdoors. It's a drop and leave program for 6 to 12-year-olds that happens from 9 till 4. So it's 7 hours of time outdoors. We get a lot of children coming to that program that they haven't spent a couple of hours outdoors by themselves, let alone 7 in a row without going into a building. And they love it. The parents that pick them up at the end of the day are like, what did you do to my child? They've got a spark and an energy, but just I haven't seen before. So they're reconnecting with nature and with community and with themselves in ways that are really so wonderful and heart-filling to see and witness. We provide opportunities for children to do things that are dangerous and risky. I love Angela Hanscom, her quote. So she says, we need to allow children to play in ways that make adults gasp. I love that. And we take that on wholeheartedly. We offer children the chance to use saws and hammers and drills, whittling tools. We have children who, when we show them what they have access to, say, oh, you're going to let me use a saw? What if I cut my hand off? This is a real concern. This is a real fear they have that, whoa, this adult is letting me use this really dangerous thing. I think our response is, well, normally people, like, if you were to cut yourself, you're not going to get through the bone. You're not going to cut your hand off. That's a learning injury that you're going to get potentially. And we find that people don't. We don't have those incidents at our programs because we give space for children to explore at their own pace, in their own ways. They climb trees today. So this school holidays is July, winter in WA. We're on Wajak Noongar land. It's Makaroo. It's the cold season. It's beautiful. It's raining today, but there's a couple of days that are going to be really wet. So we've got fire. We've got the opportunity to be in weather, be in nature, and to experience what all of those senses, how our senses engage in being in the outdoors in different seasons. Just that in itself. Permission to be in the rain, permission to have the opportunity to get drenched, and the self-management skills to know, oh, I'm cold now. I better go and get changed. I better do something about that to make myself more comfortable. But it's actually okay to get wet and to be wet and to play in the rain and enjoy the elements of nature in all seasons, no matter what weather it is.
Amazing. Yeah, it reminds me of a Nordic saying, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing.
In Australia, I think we need to be aware that heat is also an issue. And in regards to weather, you can put more layers of clothing on to protect you from the cold and to get more comfortable. But there's only certain layers that you can take off. So we do need to be aware of heat living in Australia and operating programs and getting outdoors in Australia. But yes, we wholeheartedly agree in that sentiment.
Well, and being so exposed to the elements, in an outdoor classroom setting, you definitely work a lot with the natural cycles. So talk a little bit about what seasonal activities you might do with children as it relates to, the Perth weather, which is in and of itself quite a unique experience of being in Western Australia.
Yeah. So as I was saying, our school lighter program in winter is fire-based. It's shelter-based. It's looking at ways to bring connection in to the community hearth, the community fire, and huddle, I think is a great terminology that we can use for this season. The polar opposite of that is around summertime. And so heat, we have access to the Derbil Yerrigan, the Swan River, and bodies of water where we can be on rafts and we can be in the water and we can celebrate with water and explore what it means to cool ourselves down, but also to find shade and to find spaces where wind and airflow can help us stay cool and manage our energy flow. And then in the 2 other seasons, we often look at what adventures can we have? How can we explore the wider space? What contraptions can we build? What ways can we bring an essence of tinkering and invention and more specific tool use, and some mentoring in skill development in tool use, whittling, carving, that kind of thing.
Fantastic. And with the parents who are bringing their children along to some of these events, I'm sure you get all sorts of parents where some are like the true believer nature people and they just get it. And then others are like, oh, I know it's good and we should try. And I'm just kind of coming to have a crack. What are some of the things that you would share with families where you're encouraging them to take this flame of nature or the things that they've learned and bring that home into their own culture or their own family? Because I know how hard it can be as an educator to work with parents that are dragging their feet or they've got a totally different culture going on. You're saying one thing, they're saying another. What are some of the tactics that you use to work through those communication gaps with families?
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. I think storytelling is a really, really powerful tool. Storytelling in 2 senses, storytelling with the children that we're working with. So bringing the opportunity at the end of the day. So we follow the inspiration and the work of the Deep Nature Connection movement. We take a lot of inspiration at Educated by Nature from the work of John Young and the Deep Nature Connection movement. So Coyote Started to Connecting with the Natural World is a book that provides lots of inspiration, and the Living Connection First network. So the reason I bring that up is because a big part of their work is looking at a concept called story of the day, and the way that at the end of a day, the way that at the end of a program, or even the end of a staff day, an admin day for our organization, a meeting, we do story of the day and we harvest stories. So with children at our programs, at the end of our whole day outdoors, we'll spend some time harvesting, gathering stories and reflecting back and embodying those stories in a way that enlivens them in the children's bodies and minds, make some really strong mind-body connections. And then they take those stories home. Because we are living in a society that is multicultural, and we have children who come to our programs from different cultural backgrounds where dirt is approached in different ways. Being connected and covered in dirt and sand can be taken in different formats. Things like bumps and bruises is a cultural consideration for some families. So bringing stories of joy that provide a backing and a grounding to the experiences that they've had in a day is really, really important. And then how we share those stories more publicly as well. So we think that our advocacy through our social media is really important, and sharing the ways that children are connecting and the importance of those things, as well as sharing the research that backs it. There's some incredible research coming out of some Australian universities at the moment. I know University of South Australia is doing some wonderful work in bringing as well as qualitative research on the connection to nature, outdoor learning, nature pedagogy, the importance of connection to the natural world. Here in WA, Professor Kimberly Beasley has done a PhD in botanical literacies and things like plant blindness, and opening ourselves up to connecting with the plants and the trees and the other than human in our communities. So getting that research and sharing those stories with our community is really important as well.
Just quickly, what's plant blindness? I haven't heard that term before.
Yeah, great. So plant blindness is the fact that we walk past plants and trees, shrubs, bushes in our everyday environment, and we don't see them. We don't notice them, or more specifically, we don't know them. So put a page of, fast food brands in front of a child or an adult for that matter, and they'll be able to name pretty much every one of them, I'd almost guarantee. Put a page of different trees or plants or flowers in front of a child or an adult for that matter, and you'd be hard pressed to get them to name a couple. They might know a gum tree. They might know like roses, like more European garden-based plants that we're aware of. Take them into a bush base, take them into a local park, take them into a botanic garden, and their ability to know who those other than human creatures are is a skill that's missing. So plant blindness, we don't see plants in our lives. And
wow, you've mentioned some really cool points here that I think are reflective of like the different cultural values that we have. And like dirt in one culture might not mean what it does in the next, or plants might not have, a specific value to Westerners, but to other cultures, they're much more recognized or known for their different values. And in trying to communicate those messages, some of it comes down to science, where you could say that, if we understood soil science and the different particles and like how clay and sand and loam and compost all come together, that maybe we would develop a bit of a brighter lens or a way of connecting a bit more. How much do you utilize, say, the science learning aspects of, say, earth science, understanding botany, geology, and that sort of thing? And how much do you lean towards more that pure nature connection that maybe John Shields and for listeners who don't know, please do check out John Shields' work. We've spoken a lot about it on the podcast before, and on your website, Educated by Nature, in your resource section, you've got awesome books, awesome speakers that are all connected to these deep nature connection topics. But just interested how you balance those worlds, because I know there is a bit of a balance point there between them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so. John Young, he also comes at it from a way that we connect these two worlds, that we connect the way that we can find deep connection while still accessing the scientific element of it.
Yeah.
I want to bring attention back to that word botany that you used before. And so Kimberly Beasley's work is highlighting the fact that botany has actually been removed from the Australian curriculum for the last, I think it's over 10 years, maybe even more. So botany got thrown out because it had to make way for more modern sciences. So when we started to get,
material
earth science,
sciences and like social sciences and life sciences. Yeah.
Exactly. Like space exploration and technology, and especially now that we're entering the world of artificial intelligence, those sciences are taking the place of botany, but at what expense?
Yes.
I'm not a believer in cramming in curriculum, and we work with educators all the time saying they have an overcrowded curriculum. But I feel like botany and connection to the natural world is one that we need to have in there, and is not as well as you can do it as a part of. We can do inquiry. We can do all of our curriculum attainment in the outdoors. And if we are existing in and amongst the natural world, we're going to be learning about it. And Sir David Sabel, he wrote a book. He's written a bunch of books, a professor from Antioch University in New Hampshire. I love his quote that says, we have to support children to fall in love with the earth before we can ask them to save it. So all of these other sciences are not going to matter if children aren't children who are connected to the natural world and then grow up to be adults who are connected to the natural world.
Fantastic quote. It's honestly a really great representative of everything that we just spoke about. And I think it's a really interesting time that we're in, where there is all of this focus on robotics and AI and material sciences and technology-based sciences. And like you said, that's taken over the bulk in the curriculum. If you look at the balance between all of these different sciences, earth sciences has been like crushed into this tiny little spot. And then all this other stuff takes up a lot of space. And it's about orientation, isn't it? Like, what are we orienting our culture towards? And when I go to, say, Canasta, which is the science teaching association meetup in Australia, there's so much focus on let's go to space and let's talk about colonies on Mars and let's build a robot and stuff. And like, it's cool, but it's also really lopsided. And back to that quote, unless we can support children to feel connected to the earth, how do we expect them to save it? In doing your programs, talk to us a little bit about some of the transformations that you've seen, whether it's in kids, families, or teachers. If you want to share a couple of stories there, because I know they can just be so inspirational for parents and teachers out there.
I want to use this as an opportunity to talk about teachers' realizations. And when we work with teachers, so one of your questions before is about how we support teachers in this work. And when they're feeling disconnected themselves. So a lot of what we do is work with teachers and their classes to go outside. We will lead and model the exploration of a natural space, provide opportunities and inspiration for investigation in that space. But really what our target is standing alongside and mentoring that teacher and being the voice on their shoulder to say, notice this. Have you seen this? What about this happening? What do you notice? I love the quote that says, great teachers show a child where to look, but not what to see. We do the same with teachers. We're pointing where to look, and then we're asking them, what do they see? What teachers are telling us time and time again is, wow, I didn't realize that child had those capabilities, those leadership capabilities, that depth of inquiry, that ability to wonder, that ability to focus and pay attention and engage in the ways that they are doing right now. And we're like, that's nature. Nature does that. It provides a space that captures those kids and it's everyone really, but those particular children that especially struggle in a classroom, looking at a textbook or a screen or having a verbal conversation about something, they come alive in the outdoors. Richard Louv talks, I love his quote recently. He says that, so Richard Louv is the author of Last Child in the Woods, wonderful books, but he recently has said teachers that he talks to time and time again reflects that when they take learning outdoors, when they engage outdoors in learning, that the troublemakers of the indoor classroom become the leaders, not just better behaved, but the leaders. And then he goes on to say, how many leaders are we losing? And that one gives me chills. And that, I think, is one of the biggest things that we see in our programs, in our consulting series, in our work with educators, is that they get to see their kids in a different light, and that translates back indoors. They start to see the potential of children through the lens of looking at them and the way that they engage in nature. So if we don't give them opportunities to be outdoors, we miss those opportunities to see them in that light.
Wow, fantastic. Yeah, it's so true. And nature provides this place from where we've all evolved from there, but it stimulates everything that we are on so many levels, the more time that we spend connecting there. And it is true, these leadership archetypes or personalities, they are more of a leader, more of a kinesthetic learner, I'd say. Mm-hmm. They have to learn through doing and learn through making mistakes, which naturally in an indoor setting, using things like tests or the right answers, there's not enough room for those mistakes. And having, grown up in my childhood and had a lot of friends with neurodivergent qualities, even I back then was like, this person is happy when we're out in the woods just hanging out, and then totally miserable, like completely other person when not given enough time in those environments.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Life Rocks is not just a podcast. It is an education foundation centered around connecting children to the magic of nature through earth sciences. As a self-funded foundation and startup, we are constantly seeking support so that we can continue our great work. So if you feel called to donate to Life Rocks, please head down to the show notes and find the relevant donation link. We accept regular money as well as cryptocurrencies. We greatly appreciate you, our Life Rocks community. Now, back to the show.
Now, for the urban dweller, for the teacher who's in the city, how can they get a taste of being able to do this? And what are some of the tactics that you help teachers understand that they can get through the extreme amount of red tape that surrounds a lot of teachers in their teaching practice? What are the low-hanging fruits for these teachers?
Oh, I love that question. I've just had electricity in my body because that's exactly where I love to exist.
Excellent.
So I think, first of all, we need to remember that when we're talking about nature connection, when we're talking about disconnection from nature, we're actually talking about disconnection from ourselves, because we as humans are nature. I think we exist in this, my example to plant blindness, like we are separate from the natural world. So we need to bring back our connection. Teachers living in or teaching in urban spaces, everybody has the opportunity to step outside their classroom, look up, see the sky, and automatically be connected to the wider natural world. Everybody, no matter where they exist, if they're in urban spaces, they still are impacted by weather. So they still, outside the door of their classroom, have access to temperature, rain, sun, heat, wind, all of the elements that can bring incredible connection to the wider world and to nature itself. Plants, garden beds, there are definite ways that we can bring more natural elements into our spaces. And then I would say, looking at just beyond the gate. So it might not be, first of all, I'd say have a look to your school's out of bounds zones, those spaces at the end of the oval, because most schools will have access to some sort of oval. And at the end of that oval, there's often a patch of trees that are out of bounds until the end of the school day. And that's where all the kids hang out.
Yeah, exactly.
So utilize that space, or see what's beyond the gates, see what's outside of your school grounds and local parks and spaces. Within that, there's the red tape, the bureaucracy that gets involved. And I would say upskilling yourself with risk benefit assessment processes and the policies that exist in your school, asking for help with that stuff, because often deputy principals and that level of management will be available to help with those kinds of things. And if they see an educator who's passionate about doing something different, often they're happy to help out. Not always. I will put the caveat there that there are some schools that is a tricky process. And you will get a lot of, often you'll get the, oh no, we can't do that because of this. And what I say to that is, no, our policy says we can't do that thing. And I always say to teachers, go with an inquisitive or a curious energy and say, can you show me where that is? And so I can understand more deeply why I can't do this thing. Because often the policy doesn't actually exist, or the, no, we can't do that because of this is just hearsay.
It's just a Chinese whisper.
Exactly.
Passed down the line.
Yep. So we're not allowed to climb trees in our school because we have a no tree climbing policy. I very rarely see a no tree climbing policy. I see a risk management policy that outlines benefit risk assessment or risk benefit assessment, in which case you can do your due diligence and support tree climbing to happen. But I haven't seen a school have a flat out no tree climbing policy. So asking the question of going, why can't I do this? Show me where it says that I can't do this. Because if there is no actual proof, then I'm going to try to do this in a way that fits with what our school's policy is and what I'm comfortable with as an educator.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great approach. Being open-minded, curious, and pushing the boundaries just a little bit, because let's face it, when in the past, 4 years, ever since the COVID thing happened, that really put a threat vector on childhood play, childhood development. We saw playgrounds close down. We saw regular homeschool groups, activities close down. And childhood development doesn't sleep for anybody. It's going at a rapid pace, something that we understand intellectually maybe as adults, but we don't. I would say the common adult doesn't fully understand the ramifications of how rapid that process is happening, and that 1 year of missed play, 1 year of missed social connection, like this is a scar on that child's whole life that could, manifest in different ways over the years. So what I'm really impressed with by looking at your whole approach is, and this is on your website, but you've mapped out these areas that obviously everything in the design of your programs, even in how you'd approach thinking or talking to a school about the program, like how you've just mentioned, where, you're asking, okay, where's the policy? Can I see it? Can we push these boundaries just a little bit? Comes down to some of these principles you've got here: play, physical development, a sensory diet, risk, identity, curiosity, health, and empathy. Now, that's not what you're going to find on any normal school curriculum, is it? You're going to find things like maths, English, science, communication skills, timeliness. So tell me, how did you lock these foundations in, and what are some other ways in which you feel like we get the importance of this type of curriculum across to people, as opposed to that more leaning on the traditional mindset of like, my child's got to be well read and intellectual and good for the workplace, as opposed to like, when I look at that, I think, yeah, someone who commits to that list, play, physical development, etc., that is a well-rounded human that can then figure everything else out.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big question, Asher. I love the saying you have to Maslow a child before you see them bloom. So when we go back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Right.
before a child is in a space where they can access those things that school try and fit in, we need them to have all of their needs met. And those 8 values that we hold dear at Educated by Nature fit into those. So
The needs of a human.
Yeah. And it goes back to Article 31 of the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child to play. And I think that is one of the biggest ones that we are battling and standing up for and advocating for. And the work of Play Australia at the moment here locally, but also international play associations from around the world are holding space for and holding adults in positions of power accountable to children's not only right to, but biological necessity for play to enable all of those other things to happen. We have a play deprivation that's going on at the moment, and we have children who can't access all of those other things if they haven't had that. And we're seeing that, as you mentioned, from the COVID epidemic, that we have an even bigger play deprivation that's existing in our society. So yeah, the focus needs to be not on putting our foot on the pedal on academics and pushing those even more. It's actually pulling our foot off the accelerator and returning to those things that childhood needs to be about, it should be about.
Yeah.
And really reconnecting with ourselves, with each other, with nature, and seeing the importance of how can we get back to what the bare necessities are? How can we get back to what our biological needs are?
100%. And the modern conception of play has maybe been twisted, distorted. It's a bit lost. I'm sure like there's some people out there who think, yeah, but my child plays all the time. Like they play their games or they're playing with their friends on a computer. But I think there's a definition here that people need to understand, which is free, unstructured play, where the child is in creatorship of that experience, ideally in a natural environment where there's textures and uneven ground and like temperature variations and stuff, is 100% a different thing to playing a video game where all the parameters have been set out for them and the characters have been chosen and the way it looks has been chosen. And like, it's more there. One is like a simulation of play. They're simulating what a game is. And then the other one is like the real life thing, but we're losing touch with that real life thing. And now you've got adults like yourself or myself now having to come back down and teach the kids how to play and teach the families how to play because of this lost art of playfulness.
Yeah.
How do you activate that in families? How do you activate that in other teachers? How do you share that joy and that playfulness with children? Because I know that you're a playful character. You're an artistic guy. You've got a background in theater. Like maybe some of these more playful artistic elements of life come more naturally to you. How do you share those things and how do you pay them forwards to help improve other people's skills in those areas?
Yeah. I think one of the ways that I do that personally, and we do that here at Educated by Nature, is permission and providing space for and permission to play. Okay. It seems like an absurd concept that we need to give permission to play, but I feel like especially adults are needing permission to play. So in our adult workshops, in our professional learning workshops that we offer, we actually make available the tools, the clay, the mud, the experiences that we have with children. We give those experiences to adults as well and give them the chance to play and step back and go play. so that they can embody what that feels like. They can return to that joy and that inspiration, the activation of all of their senses. They can see that, when they're involved in mud play and like getting messy with clay and really muddy experiences, that actually there's an element of sensory risk taking that they are engaged in, and they don't want to necessarily touch the mud or the clay. But then when they get into a setting with a child, they'll be like, yeah, go like touch the clay now.
Yeah.
You can get messy, but they themselves aren't comfortable with that. So permission that it's okay to get messy. It's okay to take your shoes off. It's okay to get wet. It's okay to be dirty.
Yeah.
It's okay to be all of those things, and model that as well, I think is a way that we do that to support people to go, oh, this is actually okay. And I can feel what that feels like. And then I am more connected to why that is important.
Fantastic. So Daniel, what is some of the biggest, most unexpected lessons that have come across your journey since beginning in this space back in 2014?
Unexpected lessons for me individually, for us as an organization.
Could speak to either of those things. I'm mostly interested because I think that people in the space of childhood connection, nature connection, education, we're idealists. We come in with the sense of utopia, the world that can be, the potential of the child, and wanting to unleash that potential. And then as we journey in, we find different ways to make that happen. I'm wondering, and I'm curious from your perspective, and whether that's you as an individual or as an organization, what is maybe a place or a vision where you started out, and then how has that changed or been shaped by your journey?
I think one of the things that we said from early on when we started Educated by Nature was that we would like to put ourselves out of business from the perspective of we should not have to exist.
Right.
A big lesson that's come from that is 10 years in, our society is not in a place where an organization like ours can't exist at the moment. So we still have a place, which is that's sad that our society needs organizations like ours to do the work that we're doing. I heard a quote recently at a conference that said, the world moves at the speed of trust. And so I think that is a really big lesson that we've learned, that if we want to support and push the boundaries, we need to first build relationship. We need to first build connection. And then through that relationship and connection, we build trust. And at that point, change can happen. At that point, transformation can happen. That's with our work with children. So before we support a child to have a new experience that might be uncomfortable, might be risky, might be a little bit nerve inducing, we need to provide a space that they feel comfortable, connected, and they form trust before they feel ready to take on that. And I think that's the same with teachers. We need to walk alongside educators and teachers and build trust and build connection before change can happen. So yeah, I think that would be our biggest lesson. The world moves at the speed of trust.
Wow, Daniel, that's a really powerful lesson there. And I think far be it from you and your organization being able to be put on the shelf just yet, because it seems like it's almost the opposite is true more than ever. We need leaders like yourself and promoting these things and helping to lead those other organizations through trust and through building a reputation through time. So yeah, we're super grateful that you're still in the game, still looking out for children and families. Daniel, it's been a great chat, and I think that we could continue on, discussing all things childhood for many, many hours on end, but I will wrap it up here with a question that we give everyone on the show. And if you could change one thing about the educational system or the society we live in to benefit future generations for the rest of time, what would that change be for you, my friend?
I think my change would be that the people writing the policies, making decisions about the education system, need to be people who have recent, and I would dare say current, experience in working with and for children.
Mm.
And that children's voices need to be a part of that discussion in developing the policies, procedures, curriculums, guiding documents that tell our teachers what they need to be doing. Because at the moment, there's a massive disconnect in that realm.
Wow. Beautifully and eloquently spoken. Yeah, I can't agree more. I think so much policy out there has been written from an industry standpoint, a workforce standpoint, and we're all fed up with it. And so are the kids too. So right on, right on. You can check out educatedbynature.com for all of the awesome work that Daniel and his organization are doing. Get involved. If you are in WA and you have a family over in WA, you're in luck because Educated by Nature is literally where it's at. And even if you want to go and read the resources, see who's inspired Daniel, it's very clearly outlined all there on the website. And I highly recommend anyone who's into this sort of thing. It's a wonderful resource. Daniel, thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much, Asher. It's been wonderful to chat to you.
Cheers. And thanks, Life Rocks listeners. Stay tuned for more episodes like this. Like, subscribe, and do all of those things. Until next time, Life Rocks.
Thank you so much for listening to the Life Rocks podcast. If you enjoyed the show, then leave us a review. We'll be back soon with more inspiring content, and in the meantime, remember, life rocks.